Hello and greetings, everyone. I'm Pastor Edwin Strickland, and I serve as the Senior Pastor of Fellowship of Champions Church International, a worldwide ministry helping people to learn to live out their God-given dreams by walking in love and living by faith. And I get to be your host and your guide for this exciting journey that we're about to take that we call Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are watching this from, whenever you are watching this. I want to welcome you to another episode of Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. And I am your host, Pastor Strick. And here on Ed Talk, we come together each week so that we can blend together the realms of knowledge, instruction, faith with real world solutions. And I am excited that you are here. I appreciate those of you who are taking time off from your lunch break, or maybe you're watching this, listening to this podcast as you're driving home, or maybe as you're cooking dinner, or maybe even in the afternoon as you're settling down. Whenever you are watching, wherever you are watching, however you are joining, I want to thank you for being here. Now, you know what we do every time we go live. We ask you to do a couple of things. One of those is to help me out with what we call some social media outreach. I see that there are several of you who've already done that. For those of you who haven't, what I would need you to do is to make sure that you, number one, go ahead and hit that heart button or hit that blue thumbs up button. Make sure you like the broadcast. Make sure you like the podcast, so that way those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube, those analytics get recognized and they get to help me get this message out to anybody who may want to hear it. Hello to all of you. I see people who are doing the second thing, which I normally ask, which is to hashtag your city or state. So I see I've got some Texas. I got some Virginia. Let's see what else I got. I got a Mississippi. I got a Texas. And I got a Chicago, which is Illinois. So I appreciate those of you who are already letting me know where you are watching from. Also, you know, I like to know how you're interacting with the Ed Talk podcast. So let me know if you are watching on Facebook. Let me know if you are watching on YouTube. I see I got some Conway, Arkansas in the house, some Laurel, Mississippi in the house. Some Tallahassee, Florida. So you guys keep tagging, keep sharing, keep letting me know where you're watching from. North Little Rock's in the house. I see people on Facebook. I see people on YouTube. I appreciate you guys letting me know how you're interacting and what you are doing. As always, there are a multitude of ways in which you can stay connected to the Ed Talk with Pastor Strick podcast. I like to mention those each week just so you are aware. All you have to do is go to www.pastorstrick.com. And if you go to pastorstrick.com, that will take you directly to my YouTube channel. And if you go to that YouTube channel, you can hit subscribe. And I think we're almost, I believe, around 300 subscribers. So I appreciate that. My next goal, once I get to 300, will be to get that to 500. And it'd be easy to do because all I have to do is have each one of you to recommend this podcast to one friend. And if I get 300 of you to recommend it to one friend, we'll go from 300 to 600 in no time. So I appreciate those of you who have taken the time. Even if you say, well, I like Facebook better, no problem. I still would like for you to go to www.pastorstrick.com and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Okay. Now, those of you who are more podcasters, there's an easy way for you to find me regardless to what podcast you may like to listen to. If you will go to www.pastorstrickpodcast.com, it will take you to a landing page. And on that landing page, whatever your favorite podcast platform is probably listed there. And you can just click it. And then that way you can begin to listen to my podcast on your favorite platform. Okay. So thank God for all of you being here. I appreciate it. Go ahead. I know that I can see on my end right now that there's about 42 people watching right now, and there's about 9 people who've liked the broadcast. So I need you to go ahead and take a moment, if you can, depending on the platform you're on. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you're one of my Facebook watchers, make sure you hit that like button. Okay. If you're a YouTube watcher, please make sure you subscribe. Go to www.pastorstrick.com, hit the subscribe button, and then you can come right back over here. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I want to get into what we're going to be talking about today, because I think it's something that we could all benefit from. I'm going to be talking about these 5 keys that I believe can transform and upgrade your life. Okay. We live in a world where people are constantly talking about self-help, and I have no problem with self-help. I think self-help and self-care are important. But when a lot of people are talking about self-help and self-care, a lot of times what they're talking about is almost what they can do to pamper themselves. Like people say, I had a self-care day. I went to the spa. There's nothing wrong with going to the spa. Nothing wrong with relaxing. Nothing wrong with getting your mind off the day, getting a massage, hydrotherapy, cryotherapy, whatever it is that you want to do. But these 5 things that I'm going to talk about today are things that I think we should all be doing. And I think we should all be doing them regularly, not at a time where we just feel burned out, or at a time where we feel like if we keep doing what we're doing, we're not going to make it, right? So I want to give you 5 things. I think I can get this done in 30 minutes. I really do. I want to give you 5 keys to transforming your life. In fact, I'm going to give you those 5 things right now, and then we'll come back and we'll begin to talk about them. Number 1, I think all of us, we need to be feeding our minds on a daily basis. I can't stress to you the importance of being a lifelong learner. You and I are living in a society where information is now doubling. Hear me. Information is doubling every 90 days. Every 90 days, the amount of information that we used to know is doubling. And that's because we have so much information now that is being generated through various AI technologies, through various search engines. Our servers that house that kind of technology is getting better and faster. And so we need to keep up. As human beings, we need to keep up. And one of the ways we keep up is by feeding our minds. The other thing that feeding our mind does is it allows us to not have our brain to go into this state of apathy, where it's not working and we're not thinking and we're not using parts of our brain. It's one of those things where if you don't use it, you lose it, right? The second thing we need to do is we need to feed and strengthen our bodies. This is even more important to me now as I get a little older. I hate saying older, but I mean, every year you get older, right? But I'm 52, and now I'm understanding the importance that if I want to live to be 100 years old, I've got to do some things differently than I did in my 20s and my 30s and 40s, right? And so I need to be feeding and strengthening my body. I need to strengthen my mind, feed my mind. I need to strengthen and feed my body. And then number 3, we need to get some role models that we can emulate. So many times I see people who are trying to recreate the wheel, so to speak. They're trying to do something new so that they can say they did it new, as opposed to having someone in their life who they can look to as a mentor or a role model and build upon. My wife and I, we say all the time, we really do want our ceiling to be the floor for our children. We don't want our children to have to get it out the mud. We don't want them to have to start over. We don't want them to have to make the same mistakes that we made, go through the same things that we did in order to only get where we got to. We want them to have a leg up, if you will. And so in order to do that, we've got to be people who understand the importance of role models and why emulating them is important. I didn't say be a carbon copy, and we'll talk about that, but how you emulate your role models so that you can go further, faster. And then the 4th thing we want to talk about is we did a whole entire podcast on this, and that is about taking massive action. So many people spend their life planning and thinking and debating about what they should do, but they do not ever get up and take massive action. And as a result, they don't see the life they could have because they don't take the necessary steps to do it. And then we'll finish with step number 5 about giving more than you expect to receive. There is power in giving. And I'm not talking about just money, but there is a power in giving. And so let's jump into today's podcast, and let's begin by talking about this first idea about feeding your mind on a daily basis. When I was in my doctoral program, there was a professor. His name was Dr. Sean Mulvaney, and no one really wanted to take Dr. Mulvaney's class, but you really only had either him or one other professor, and they only offered this particular research methodology and statistics class like once every other year, and they alternated who taught the class. And if you didn't want Dr. Mulvaney and you didn't take that class, you may end up having to wait a whole nother year in order to take the class, which meant the other classes you had to take after that, because this class was a prerequisite, you wouldn't end up taking. And so it was kind of just the luck of the draw for whenever you started the program, who you're going to have for this class. And the way it worked out, I had Dr. Sean Mulvaney for my particular statistics class. So I just had to take it. Well, one of the reasons that people didn't want him for their instructor wasn't because he was mean or rude or even difficult, but he believed in this philosophy about being able to run research statistics. He would say this. He would say, you cannot use the software program SPSS or the software program SAS in my class until you have demonstrated that you can actually do the mathematical work for the statistics problems that's going to actually be running on the software. And so that's why people did not want to take his class, because he believed in this philosophy that if it was garbage in, it was garbage out. And if you couldn't ascertain what the garbage was, you didn't know whether or not your results were garbage or not. And so when we talk about feeding your mind, that's kind of the framework I want to start from today about what it means to free your mind. This phrase that Dr. Mulvaney had about garbage in, garbage out, it is a phrase that I believe is accurate for our minds as well as for a software program. Why? Because any sophisticated algorithm is only going to be able to give you back information that you have given to it. Okay. And so if you spend your day not feeding your mind or feeding your mind with things that don't benefit you, you spend all of your time watching reality television. And I'm not against reality television. I'm not against television at all. But if you spend all of your time just saturated in reality television or just in sports, or even if you just spend all of your time watching just negative news, if you spend all of your time in something that's not benefiting you, then the only thing that's going to come out of you is the thing that doesn't benefit you. Why? Because it's the mantra, garbage in, garbage out. Now, there's a guy by the name of Jim Rohn, and a lot of people have probably heard of Jim Rohn. He is a revered figure in the world of personal development. And he once famously said this, and I think it's so important that we grab hold to this, especially in lieu of this idea of what are things we can do to transform and update our life. Jim Rohn said that formal education, formal, going to school, getting a degree, getting education, he said formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. Now you think about that. Schools are not designed to cause you really to think outside the box. Schools are designed to really get you to begin the process of how to think, and sometimes to critically think, depending on the school and depending on the teacher and the system that you're in. But schools aren't designed to make people billionaires. They're just not. If you're going to live beyond your current state of living, you're going to have to get new information. And as I told you before, I was reading just the other day, they said new information is doubling every 90 days. So if you're not feeding your mind about something in your particular field, if you're not feeding your mind about something that matters to your career, to your health, to your family, to your spirituality, then you are not giving yourself the good things you need in order for the good things to be produced out of you. So feeding your mind every day gets us out of this state of garbage in, garbage out, as long as we're feeding our mind with the right thing. See, this statement underscores the immense power of feeding our minds and enriching ourselves with content that actually means something on a daily basis. You have to kind of stop and think, what do you do every day to actually feed your mind? Because a lot of us, I think we just live our life and we're just going and we're responding. And we know that we make some 60,000 decisions a day. And in making those 60,000 decisions a day, most of them are not even decisions we think about. They're just things we do. They run on automaticity for us. But what are you actually feeding yourself? What are you actually doing? And then the question becomes, why does it even matter that I spend time feeding my mind daily? Well, the reality is that our thoughts shape our realities. John Maxwell, who used to be a pastor and now he is a famous guru in the area of leadership. John Maxwell once stated that you become what you think about most of the time. Now think about that statement. You become what you think about most of the time. If you were to chart what you spend most of your time thinking about, is it what you want to be? And if it's not what you want to be, then you've got to do something differently to change what you think about most of the time. And the only way to change what you think about most of the time is to change the information that you digest, to change the information that you take in, to change the information that you feed on a daily basis. If you do not do that, then you end up in this situation or you end up in this place where you're literally just living your life almost as a groundhog. What do I mean by living your life as a groundhog? Whatever happened yesterday pretty much happens today. Even though you made decisions yesterday, those same things come up today. You make the same decisions today. You don't change them. They don't move. They don't get different. Why? Because you're not feeding your mind the necessary information in order to think of things differently. Now, why do I say this? Because it is a fundamental truth that in the realm of personal transformation, if you want to grow, if you want to get better, then information, ideas, and inspiration must be consumed on a daily basis because they influence our beliefs, they influence our actions, and they ultimately influence our destinies. If I want to live differently next year, I have to do something different between now and next year in order to get something different. We've all heard the saying that to do the same thing over and over and over, expecting to get different results, is a form of insanity. It is insane to think that if you do not spend your time consuming information that leads you into a new direction, that somehow just because the days tick along, that you will end up in a different place. It's why old people used to say things like there's nothing worse than an old fool. Why? Because the assumption was is you may be a fool in your teens, but you shouldn't be that same fool in a 30. And you shouldn't be that same fool in a 50-year-old body, or you shouldn't be that same fool in a 70-year-old body. That you ought to be feeding your mind on a daily basis and thinking about what can I do to get better. So what are some of the things you can do to feed your mind? I thought this was interesting. One of the things that you can do to feed your mind is to read voraciously. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you should be reading every single day. Now, I'll tell you, I am not a big book reader. Okay. My wife will tell you I'm not a big book reader. I don't sit around and pick up a 600-page novel and spend a day or two reading it. I don't do that. But I consume large amounts of information. In fact, I consume so much information, I actually subscribe personally to a website called SoundView. And I'm not telling you that you have to do that. I don't work for them. I don't get any bonus, but I use SoundView. What is SoundView? SoundView is this website that allows you through a subscription. They take the latest books that have come out in all different kind of areas: leadership, marketing, sports psychology, education, whatever the newest business books are. And they synthesize those books down to about 6 to 8 pages in a PDF. They give you all of the highlights. And I probably read on a daily basis 2 or 3 of those summaries every day. Now, why do I do that? Because maybe I'm thinking about leadership. Maybe I'm thinking about how I lead people. Maybe I'm thinking about character. Maybe I'm thinking about ethics. Maybe I'm thinking about finances and business. Whatever I'm thinking about that day, I go to that website. It allows you to search the subject area and the competency. And then I sit down and I spend an hour and I read through that PDF. I digest that information. Why? Because that information is feeding my mind. It is building upon what I already know and giving me new information so that when I encounter old problems, I don't respond in the same old way. In fact, Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, and one of the most successful investors in the whole entire 20th century, says that he spends, now watch this, 80% of his day reading, not investing, but he spends 80% of his day reading. What is he reading? More than likely, he's reading about companies he's going to buy. He's reading about the market. He's reading about the news. He's reading about anything that is going to allow him to synthesize information in a consumable way so that he can make better decisions than he made yesterday. So whether it's a book, whether it's an article, whether it's some kind of news story, you should be dedicating some time of your day every day where you are feeding your mind. You should aim to read at least a book a week or at least 30 articles a week. You should start with some classics, things. If you're looking to change your finances, you can read things like, the classics from Napoleon Hill, like Think and Grow Rich, or Dale Carnegie has a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think a lot of people would benefit from reading books with those kind of materials. Why? Because a lot of us, we sometimes, I don't know how to say this appropriately, so I'm just going to say it the way I say it. A lot of times, us as African Americans, and I'm saying African Americans because I know most of my listeners are African Americans. And interesting enough, a lot of my listeners are men. So I'm going to be talking to a lot of African Americans, men and women here when I make this statement. We did not grow up understanding how the game is played, and especially how the game is played now. And a lot of times we are out here trying to play checkers when the game is actually chess, right? And so because we don't read a lot of information in books about how the game really is played, we're still trying to play checkers when the world is playing chess. And so one of the ways that you can benefit yourself, one of the ways you can help yourself live out your destiny, live out your dreams, have better habits, have better focus, have better belief systems, take massive action, is by actually reading material that tells you how to do it, right? One of the things you can do too, that sometimes we as African Americans are slow to do, is around this idea of leveraging technology. You can leverage technology. I was explaining to you why I use SoundView. I use SoundView because I'm not a person who sits down and read entire books. Okay. I don't sit down and read a 400 or 500 page book in a week. What I will do is I will consume multiple books through SoundView because it allows me to be able to either listen to the summary of the book or allows me to be able to read through the summary of the book. A lot of the information and things that I understand, sometimes people will say, well, how did you know that? Well, I read it. Well, where did you read it? Well, I read it in a book. I didn't read the entire book, but I read the summary of the book. I read the nuggets of it. And so you have to leverage technology. We live in an age now. There was a book someone suggested to me, and I was like, okay, I don't have time to read this, but I need to have this information before I have this particular conversation I'm about to have. So I leveraged technology. I went to ChatGPT and said, hey, based on this book, Give me the highlights and the most important points of this book. And ChatGPT did it. It gave me the highlights of that book. I read it, I digested it. The things I didn't understand, I went to Google, I asked it questions. Listen, you have to learn to leverage technology. Okay, you gotta be. It's so funny because a lot of times, what people will do. Have you ever? And I know you've had this happen. People will ask you a question when they could have Googled it. They will literally ask you a question, and you're like, Google it, or ask ChatGPT, or ask another AI platform. People aren't in the habit of feeding their minds, okay? And they need to get into the habit of feeding their minds. The other thing you can do is actually engage in intellectual discussions. You need to surround yourself with people who challenge you intellectually. If you're the smartest person in your group, you need to add more people to your group. You need people who are as smart as you or smarter than you, at least in particular areas. I love hanging out with our tribe because we can be as silly as we can be. But there are also times where we will engage in discussions on diverse topics. Why do we do that? Because it not only exposes each of us to different perspectives, but it also sharpens our critical thinking and communication skills. And you need to be sharpening your communication skills. Now, I know this isn't church, but I'm a pastor. And so I always have to interject something that the Word of God says, because I think the Word of God is all encompassing on so many things. And so the Bible tells us in Proverbs 27:17, it says that iron sharpens iron. So one person sharpens another. I feed my mind by sharpening other people and being sharpened by them when we engage in intellectual discussions. Okay. So the first thing we got to do, if we want to transform our life, and if we want to upgrade our life, we need to get into the habit. And remember, we talked about developing habits and how we develop better habits. In our Build Better series, we talked about that. So how do I do this? How do I feed my mind on a daily basis? I start with something small. I have a goal. Maybe it's something small, a manageable goal. And then I commit in the terms of feeding my mind. I say, okay, you know what? I'm going to read at least 2 articles a day that I search out and I read that has something to do with what I want my life to be or the direction I want my life to go in. I'm not just going to read 2 articles about what's happening on Love and Hip Hop. Nothing wrong with knowing what's going on in Love and Hip Hop, but unless you're trying to be on Love and Hip Hop, that can't count towards your goal. Okay. So I'm going to commit to 20 pages a day, or I'm going to commit to 3 or 4 articles a day, or I'm going to listen to 10 or 15 minutes of some educational podcast each morning. Maybe I'm going to listen and go back and listen to the Build Better series that Pastor Strick did on the Ed Talk with Pastor Strick podcast. Okay. But no matter what you do, here's the key: consistency. Consistency is going to be your key. Over time, incrementally increasing your goals will happen as your appetite for knowledge grows. The more you feed your mind, the more you'll want to know. Okay. So then that's what you need to do. Let's jump to number 2. Number 2 is about feeding and strengthening your body. Now, those of you who are a part of my wife's group, Soul Shift, then you know they are on something they call Prosper Well. Mary said, what is the website that you said you go to for the books? It's called SoundView. SoundView, soundview.com. And again, I'm not a salesperson for them. There's a yearly subscription cost for it. But if you're serious about digesting large amounts of information in an efficient way, SoundView can be your friend. In fact, my oldest son, Chase, and I are going through a book study. And what we do is we choose a book a month, okay? And he's reading the book, and I'm also reading the book, but we use SoundView as our way to make sure we're hitting those key points, okay? It's a great way to do a book study, great way to do a book club, great way to get information. So yes, Mary, it's called SoundView. So number 2, you want to feed and strengthen your body. Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live in. Do you hear me? You got to take care of your body. I'm amazed at the number of people who will go and buy a new car. And that new car will say only use 91 or 93 octane gas. And it don't matter how high that gas is, they will not, under any condition, put 87 octane gas in their car. Now think about that. They won't put 87 octane gas in their car, but they will put every processed food there is in their body. They will drink every sugary drink there is. They will consume enormous amounts of calories, and they will be sedentary and not move their body on a daily basis. But yet they will not put 87 octane gas in their car. We cannot care more about our vehicles than we care about our bodies. We must take care of our bodies. It is the only place we have to live in. Why does this matter so much? Because if you don't take care of your body, you are shortening the days you have on this earth. There are literally people eating themselves to death. And let me say this, because sometimes I think when people make that statement, in their mind, all they picture is the person on My 600-Pound Life. You don't have to be 600 pounds to be eating yourself to death. You can be 5'7", 145 pounds and still eating yourself to death. Because there are people who are not overweight, but there are people who eat things that's not good for their particular body. They know they're not supposed to eat dairy, but they eat it anyway, and it makes them sick. They know they're not supposed to have gluten, but they eat it anyway, and it makes them sick. They know they're not supposed to eat meat, but they eat it anyway, and it makes them sick. You don't have to be overweight in order to be unhealthy. Okay? So we need to get that idea out of here, right? Because you don't, just because someone can look healthy doesn't mean that they're healthy. And so I'm encouraging everybody, myself included, we all have to do better. We need to feed and strengthen our bodies. Our bodies are the vessels that carry us through life's journeys. And their well-being, our body's well-being, directly impacts our ability to pursue and achieve our dreams. You know, I don't have any grandkids. I'm not ready for any grandkids. I don't think my kids are ready for any kids. So we're on the same page. But when I have them, I don't want to be the grandpa at Disneyland riding the mobility chair because I didn't do what was necessary when I was this age in order to be the vibrant silver fox grandparent right down the road. So I got to start today. We have to make sure that we are moving our bodies. We got to make sure we're eating the right things. The World Health Organization put out a quote about 3 years ago, and here's what they said in the quote. It was right around the time of the pandemic. They said health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And so when I'm talking about feeding and strengthening our bodies, I'm not just talking about physically. I'm talking about the mental aspect of our body. I'm talking about our social well-being, not just the absence of disease or infirmity, but I'm talking about total life prosperity in the realm of our health. Okay. So we got to make sure that we're doing what's necessary. And you have to understand it. Just because one person does something and it's good for them doesn't mean it's good for you. Okay. Everything everybody does is not good. They tell you it's really good to eat broccoli. I actually like broccoli, but if I eat broccoli, if I know I'm going to eat broccoli, I have to take either these certain herbs or I have to take a Beano peel or something, because broccoli gives me the most painful gas under my chest that I've ever experienced. And so even though someone says, oh, you need to be eating more broccoli, maybe I don't. Maybe I need to eat something else that has the same nutrients, the same macros, and everything else that the broccoli has, but broccoli may not be good for me. So I'm not telling you to do what you see everybody doing, but I am telling you to find out what works for you and for your body and get you a plan for how you can do it. And again, the key here is consistency. Am I saying you can't ever have a little ice cream? No. Am I saying you can't ever have a little piece of cake? No. Am I saying you can't ever have a soda? No. What I am saying to you, though, is that those things should be far and few in between as you're trying to build up your health and your strength. You also should be doing things that strengthen you mentally. Part of feeding your mind, will help you mentally, right? If you struggle with feeling low self-esteem, you should be reading books that talks about how to develop higher self-esteem. If you often find yourself apologizing for everything you do, you should read books about how to get out of the habit of always saying you're sorry. Read books about being authentically you and owning your space. The more you read that information, the more it gets in your head. The more it gets in your head, the stronger you develop mentally. The stronger you develop mentally, it gives you the fortitude to do things to help you develop physically, and then your social well-being and all that comes into play. Okay. Somebody says, where do we start with mental emptiness? Well, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a licensed counselor. Okay. There's probably a lot of good information out there. But one of the things I would do too, though, is, I would reach out to someone, and not just someone, but I would reach out to someone who is trusted. I don't know if she's on here, but we have a pastor on our staff, Pastor Tenitria Williams, who is a licensed, certified, all the words you want to use, Christian counselor, who not only is good at her job, but she hears from God. And so if you really are struggling in some area, I don't know what your insurance is and what her parameters are for taking new clients and things, but I'd reach out. I'd find out. But absolutely, I would start reading books about how to strengthen my self-esteem. We live in a society where so much of our self-esteem, and I say we live in a society. I'm a Gen Xer, right? As a Gen Xer, I didn't grow up with social media. We barely had VHS tapes, and you couldn't even, everybody didn't have a camcorder or a recorder because they were so expensive when they first came out. It wasn't like everybody has a phone now and can take pictures. So I didn't grow up like that. But my children, some who are, I guess most of them are actually millennials or Gen Z, depending on their age, maybe my youngest one, they grew up in this era of social media. Okay. And so much, if we're not careful, what their identity is based on what they see. And we know that what we see on social media is not real. We know it's not real. People take a toilet seat up to a window and open it up and take a picture out and then put a status up talking about, I'm flying across the sea once again. No, you're not. We see all kind of crazy things that happen that just aren't real. And so we can't allow social media to become our reality. So if you're struggling with that, absolutely. I bet you there's some things on SoundView that would help you. There are ways in which we can strengthen our bodies. I've talked about nutrition, right? The Hippocratic oath that people take. The guy who is known as the father of medicine, he has this quote that says, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So many times we want to rely on medicine rather than relying on the food that we eat. It's crazy that you can go to a doctor, right? And the doctor will literally tell you, oh, you don't have to stop eating that, but you need to take this pill. Well, how about I stop eating that and don't take the pill? But it's Big Pharma's job to sell us all of this medication because it makes money. But we've known for millennia that certain foods will heal us. We know that the body is designed to heal itself, right? And I don't mean that you don't ever go to the doctor. I don't mean you don't take the doctor's advice, but I'm saying some of the infirmities that we have are self-inflicted. They're self-inflicted. They're food-inflicted. Right? We eat so much stuff that's not even food. And I don't have time to get into all of that. But most of I think they said 80 years ago, if you went to a grocery store, no, it was 50 years. 50 years ago, if you went to a grocery store, you go back in time 50 years, 80% of the stuff that's sold in grocery stores would not be sold today. They didn't exist. They're processed foods. You go to a grocery store, and unless you go to the perimeter of the grocery store, where they got your fresh fruits, your veggies, even now some of your cheeses and stuff are processed. And I used to say your meats, but now some of our meats are processed, right? Your milk, your dairy, all that stuff. Everything else in the middle of that store is processed. It's processed. It's over-processed. Everything in the middle of that grocery store is over-processed. In fact, most of it's not real food. And so we have to make sure that we're taking our nutrition seriously. We have to make sure we're taking our exercise seriously. And we have to make sure we spend time in rest and recovery. Okay, so you got to feed and strengthen your body. Now, how do you do that? Again, start small. Make incremental changes. Swap out some of your processed foods for some whole foods, at least for one meal a day. Introduce a 10-minute walk into your day. I know a lot of times people think that exercise has to be this grueling thing where you're sweating and you're aching and you're hurting. But I'm telling you, people ask me how I got from 267 pounds to 179, and I'm telling you, I did it by walking. Now, walking wasn't the only thing I did, but I did not get it because I was out there running marathons. I didn't get it because I was in the gym lifting hundreds of pounds, 2 and 3 hours a day. I changed what I ate, I changed when I ate, and I moved my body. And if you move your body, if you will change what you're currently eating, and if you will change how often you are eating, then I am telling you, you will see a difference. Most people don't think that they eat a lot. But if you ever track everything you put in your mouth over the course of a day, I am telling you, you would be shocked. You will be shocked at how much you eat and how many calories you take in a day. And the truth of the matter is, our bodies have gotten used to it because a lot of the things we eat, they're not nutritional foods, and all they're designed to do is to make our brains think we're hungry. Now, why would they do that? Why would a company, think about it, why would a company sell me something that after I eat it, 90 minutes later, I think I'm hungry again? Why would a company do that? Maybe because they can sell me more stuff, right? And so we have to understand that, those companies aren't looking out for our best benefit. And so if they're not, then we have to look out for our own. All right. All right. Let's talk about number 3. You got to find a good role model. Tony Robbins, who is someone who I've followed to some degree since the time I was about 12 or 13 years old, he makes this statement, and it's really a statement from the Bible, but he says it like this. He says, success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. This statement underscores the importance of learning from those who've achieved what we aspire to achieve. Did you hear me? When you have a role model and you understand the concept that success leaves clues, you understand that this is talking about the importance of learning from those who have achieved what we desire to achieve. Role models serve as beacons of possibility for us. They demonstrate that the goals that we set for ourselves are not only attainable, but there is a systematic process in which they can be obtained. And they can indeed be reached by someone who looks like me. That's what having a role model does for you. Now, having a role model doesn't mean that you have to be a carbon copy. Understand this. Humans are inherently social creatures. We are. And we learn a lot of times by observation and by emulation. Role models provide us a tangible example of success, offering insight into the mindset, into the habits, and into the strategies that led to high achievement. If you want to know how someone got good at something, the best thing you can do is, number one, begin to see how they move. What are their actions? What are they doing? But that doesn't always tell you the full story. And that's the reason why having a role model or having a mentor is good, because they can give you the nuances to how they moved. They can give you the nuances to why they thought the way they thought. They can give you the nuances of the strategy development that they employed in order to get to where they are. So the question often becomes then, how do I find a role model? Because here's what role models do. They inspire us. So who inspires you? Role models push us. Who in your life is pushing you to greatness? And then role models elevate our standard. Pastor Shun and I are going to come tonight, and we're going to talk in Relationships 101. And I'll go ahead and just make this plug real quick while I'm doing this. Our Relationships 101 class is going to be tonight at 7 p.m. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is, how do you raise your level of personal standard in order to improve all of your relationships? And it's going to be great. And you should join us tonight at 7 p.m. You should join us tonight at 7 p.m. But let me get back to talking about these role models, because role models elevate our standards and they show us that obstacles can be overcome. We know that we're not going to be in this world without having any troubles. The Bible tells us that in this world we will have troubles. Now, Jesus tells us not to worry because he's already overcome those troubles, and that if we are in him, we too have overcome those troubles. But we need to find role models that we can emulate. And I don't mean that you need to be a carbon copy of this person, but you do need to have a role model or a mentor who can help put you on the right path. So how do you find role models? Well, you begin by reflecting on your own personal goals and values. You look for individuals who embody those same aspirations. When I look at role models, one of the things that's extremely important to me, no matter how successful the role model or mentor is, I look at their character. I look at their character. Their character has to be on par with what I believe God has called me to be on. If it's not, it's hard for me to allow them to fully be a mentor or role model to me, because my prayer forever has been, God, don't take me anywhere my character can't keep me. And so I don't want to have a mentor who knows how to get ahead, but they get ahead because they cheat. They get ahead because they lie. They get ahead because they steal. They get ahead because they don't treat people well, right? I don't need those kind of mentors and role models in my life. And a lot of times I think that people think that only those kind of people can be your role models. But there's someone out there who is a role model who has done what you want to do, and they've done it the right way. So then the second thing you have to do is you have to identify all of your goals and your values, and then you have to study the life of the people who you think should be your role model, which is what I was just talking about. Dive deep into their biographies. Maybe it's a person who you know, maybe it's a person you don't know. I consider Dr. I.V. Hilliard to be one of my role models. I've only met him twice and had a conversation with him once. And it was a short conversation, and I'm sure he doesn't remember me. But I learned from him because I've watched his life. I watch his character. I watch what he does. I watch how he moves. I watch how he thinks. You can have a role model who is a far off role model, but you can also have those people that are close in your life, right? And then you have to learn to adopt their mindset, right? If your mindset is so diametrically opposed to the person you want to be like, you're probably never going to reach the same goals. So you have to learn to change your mindset. One of the mindsets that I adopted from Dr. Hilliard years ago was the idea is I'm going to go as far as my faith will take me. I'm going to go as far as my faith will take me. However far my faith will take me, that's how far I'm going to go. I can't wait and hope and dream that I could do more. I got to go as far as I can go right now. That's one of the things I learned. And then you have to learn to apply those lessons in your daily journey. You have to apply those lessons in your daily journey. Why do you need to apply them? Because of step number 4. If you're going to have a role model who's going to give you all of this wisdom and information, then the next thing you need to do is you need to learn to take massive action. You got to take massive action. Action is the foundational key to all success. This quote about action being the foundation to all of our success underscores, at least for me, the undeniable truth that dreams and goals are only realized through decisive and persistent action. Goals are only realized through decisive and persistent action. And we must remember that. The difference between those who achieve their dreams and those who don't lies in their willingness to take action. You cannot sit around and just think about what you want to do all day. Action transforms ideas into reality. They test our limits and they catalyze our personal growth. Okay. Tony Robbins, again, one of the people who I study and listen to. I was involved in one of his online things just last week, and he made this statement last week, and I wrote it down because I knew I wanted to use it today. He says, the path to success is to take massive, determined actions. That is the path to success. You want to know how to be successful? You have to start taking massive, not just massive, but massive, determined actions. How do I do that? Number 1, you set clear and specific goals. Okay. After you set those clear, specific goals, number 2, you break down those goals. You break them down into small, manageable parts that you can do so that you can reward yourself for accomplishing them as you go. And then you got to have a sense of urgency. If you're going to take massive, decisive action, there has to be a sense of urgency. You have to treat your goals with the urgency that they deserve. Do you want to be out of debt in the next 3 years? Okay, then what massive actions do you need to take in order to be out of debt for the next 3 years? You can't spend the next 3 years doing what you've done if you want to be out of debt in the next 3 years. So you got to create this sense of urgency. And then you have to learn to embrace failure. Every decision you make won't be 100% correct, but you have to learn to embrace failure and see it as a stepping stone, see it as a learning opportunity. Understand that failure is an integral part of the learning process. Every setback offers valuable lessons that can refine your strategy and strengthen your resolve. And you know, here at Ed Talk, we talk about resolve and resiliency all the time. So it's important that you do that. And then you have to leverage accountability. Why do I need to leverage accountability? I need someone who can hold me accountable to my goals. I want to be self-accountable, but every now and then we all need someone who we can partner with who will also leverage that accountability with us and will hold us responsible. Who have you shared your goals with? You know, when I was going through my whole thing that I was trying to reach a particular goal weight by a particular day, I was sharing that with a couple of people. They would check in and say, "Hey, where are you this week? How are you doing?" If I didn't have a good day and I messed around and ate something I shouldn't have, I let them know, "Hey, listen, today was an off day. I blew it today. I got to get back on track." Why did I tell them that? Because I knew they would tell me to get back on track. So you have to leverage accountability. And then, of course, you have to adopt a growth mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you'll never change. You have to have a growth mindset. And then lastly, number five, the fifth thing you need to do if you are going to transform and upgrade your life is you got to be a giver. You got to learn to give more than you expect to receive. There's a quote that says, "The secret to living is learning to give." The secret to living is learning to give. This profound statement captures the essence of true fulfillment and success. The principle of giving more than you expect to receive is not just a noble act, but it's a powerful catalyst for personal and professional growth. Giving fosters a sense of community. It strengthens relationships and it builds trust. It contributes to our sense of purpose and our well-being. We've talked before about this thing called the giver's high. When you give, when you help someone, endorphins are released on the inside of you, and it causes you to be a person, right? It causes you to be a person who feels better, who's motivated to do more. Winston Churchill once said this. He says, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. So what should I be giving? You should be giving of your time. You should be giving of your time. Time is one of the most precious commodities that we have. Find some place to volunteer. Find some place to help. Find somebody to help, right? Offer your time and then share your knowledge. If you're gaining knowledge because you're feeding yourself every day, be willing to share that knowledge and wisdom with someone when they need it. And then learn to express gratitude. Listen, I am not where I want to be in life, but I thank God for where I am today. I thank God for where I am, but I know that he has more for me. I know that there's greater for me. And so I'm expressing gratitude at the same time. I'm still striving, still taking massive, determined action to get to where I need to be. The other thing I think people need to do more of in this entire world is practice more random acts of kindness. It costs you nothing to be kind. It costs you nothing. What do I mean to be kind? Maybe you're driving down the street and you know there's a long line behind you and there's just one car waiting to get out to go in the same direction you're going. Just stop. Let them out. It takes 2 seconds. Let them out. You may make their day and it makes you feel good and you've done something good. So find random small ways to be kind to people. I was at Walmart the other day and an older lady was pushing a buggy back inside. And I said, "Hey, I'll take it for you." And she was like, "Oh, thank you so much." I could tell the relief on her face that she didn't have to walk all the way back in and then back to her car. It's just something small. It costs me nothing. Being kind costs you nothing. And then lastly, spend your time donating to the things that you believe in. Okay. If you go to church, make sure that you're working in that church. Don't just go to church and just take, and never give back. If you're a person who can serve on the prayer team, volunteer. If you can be a greeter, volunteer. If you can work with kids, volunteer. If you can sweep, volunteer. If you can serve in the hospitality room, volunteer. Don't just be a taker. If you want to transform and upgrade your life, you have to learn to give more than you expect to receive. And when you begin to do that, you'll start seeing that the more you give, the more it's really coming back to you. And so you got to make sure that you're taking the time to do that. Giving more than you expect to receive is a powerful principle. It's a principle that will transform not only your life, but those all around you. This principle embodies the truth of fulfillment, and it comes not from what we acquire, but from what we contribute to the world. And so today, I hope that one of these 5 things is something that you can actually put your hands on and say, you know what? I'm going to implement this in my life today. I'm going to start to feed my mind more than what I'm doing. I'm going to be purposeful about feeding my mind. I'm going to feed and strengthen my body. Those of you that are in Prosper Well, what I want to encourage you is that if you're in Prosper Well, don't stop when Prosper Well is over. Keep prospering. It's funny because people will say to me sometimes, I say, you know, when we were fasting, or when we were doing X, Y, and Z, and when we were on this challenge or that challenge, I felt so much better. My knees didn't hurt. My back didn't hurt. I didn't have headaches. And I say, well, what happened? They said, well, we stopped doing it. Well, why did you stop doing it? If not eating something was good for you on a particular challenge, just because the challenge is over, don't mean you stop. You keep doing what's good for you. Keep feeding and strengthening your body. Seek out those role models that you need to seek out. Whether that's a historical figure, whether that's somebody who you know, but you don't necessarily can put your hands on, or whether it's somebody you can put your hands on. You can learn from them. Pastor Sean and I don't get a chance to talk to our spiritual parents every single day, but we can learn from them every single day. We can watch their actions. We can listen to their teachings. We can hear their guidance, and you can do the same thing. And then number 4, learn to take massive action. Don't be in a state of paralysis because of your analysis. Once you have heard from God, my wife and I say this all the time, confer no longer with flesh and blood. Take massive, determined action. Well, what if I miss it? Then you'll learn something from it. And now you'll be able to implement it the next time, and the next time you won't miss it. But don't let analysis paralyze you. Okay? And then lastly, make sure you're a giver. Give more than you expect to receive, and watch how God, and I say God, not the universe, watch how God will give back to you. Okay? All right, listen, I appreciate those of you who have tuned in. I want to encourage you one more time to join Pastor Sean and I tonight at 7 p.m. We will be hosting the April edition of Relationships 101. Class begins promptly at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can view us on Facebook or YouTube. We will be broadcasting from both of our personal pages. We'll be broadcasting from the Edwin and Sean Strickland page, and we'll be broadcasting from the Fellowship of Champions pages. So however you engage with us, you will be able to engage tonight for Relationships 101. Thank you, El Harris. I appreciate that. I hope it helped. I hope all of you got something out of today's teaching, something that you can implement in your life today so that you can begin to transform and upgrade your life. Listen, I appreciate you. I'll see you guys later, and I hope all of you have an amazing, amazing Tuesday.